Welcome back. You're watching Morning Live. Thank you for choosing to stay with us. Now, last week we showed you part one of Lebo's conversation with Nigerian poet and author Ben Okri. This week, it's part two. Enjoy.
Books have always been around you. I mean, there's somewhere where I read that your father had kept books somewhere and he had said, don't even touch those books. But by just sheer of saying that, you reached out and fetched those books. What is the first book that was in that library that changed your life?
Goodness, that's a tough question. I'm tempted to say it was the Arabian Nights. Because my father got his collection when he was in England. He brought them back with him to Africa with the intention of reading his way through them. But of course, what he didn't count on was Africa's tremendous ability to draw, distract, and divert you, entertain you, stun and surprise you. He didn't have much of a chance to get back to his library. So it gathered dust. And so my father would say to me every morning, Ben, dust the books, but don't read them. And I don't know whether he was being psychological with me or not, but don't read them. Dust the books, but don't read them. That was an attraction. So I dust them and I look around and I say, what is in this thing that Dad doesn't want me to see? And that's how I started reading. And I read my way through his library. And the Arabian Nights and a retelling of the Odyssey, I think, were the earliest things. But for me, reading really became something very magical and intimate when I discovered our writers. People like Tutuola, Achebe, and some of the children's books. Something different happened when I discovered them. It was like suddenly the landscape in which I found myself was capable of being transformed into literature. That was astonishing.
Take us back to the birth of Flowers and Shadows. I mean, that was a turning point in your life as well, and this is something that had your name on it. You know, take us through that journey.
Well, Flowers and Shadows began as a short story, and that's the reason why to this day I say to young writers, if you really want to learn how to write, you have to learn how to write the short story. The short story is a secret to prose writing. For one very simple reason: you're trying to accomplish a great deal in a very short amount of space. Brevity is a great secret. It's easy to write long. It's very difficult to write short. So I was writing these short stories, and one short story just grew and grew and grew and grew. It's the nature of the beast, as it were. And each day it became something else, and it just kept expanding. It was just this one short story, and I kept thinking, this is no longer a short story. I'd never thought of writing a novel. It was finished. I was about 17, going on 18, and then I rewrote it. The first draft was very bad. It should be. I must stress that to young writers. If your first draft isn't bad, you're not serious as a writer. But it's not your first draft that counts, it's the rewriting. It went through 2 or 3 drafts, and I took it to London with me and rewrote it under a different air. It was published 2 years later. And I remember the very day that the copies of the book came through the post. And I opened the packet and pulled it out, and there was this book, Flowers and Shadows, and there was this very strange name underneath it, Ben Okri. And I remember staring at this name thinking, who is this person who wrote this book? And the real reason why it was a turning point was because of my father. My father wanted me to inherit his chambers because he was a lawyer, and he'd been grooming me all his life to go to be a lawyer. He'd take me to court, I'd carry his briefcase, I'd listen to him defending criminals and the innocent. And one day I said to him, Dad, I'm not going to study the law, I'm going to be a writer. And he said, are you mad? You want to be a writer? Why would you want to be a writer? He was very disappointed. The book came out, and one day he was in court, big case, and the judge called my dad over and said to him, do you have a brother called Ben Okri by any chance? And my father said no. He said, no. Why? He says, oh, I've just read his book. It's a very good book. My father said, he's my son. From that moment onwards, my career was sanctioned. He allowed me to develop as a writer, but it took a judge. And I say, I was very lucky that I had good judgment on my first book.
How did your journey, and how has it changed over the years, and how has it shaped the man that's sitting here today, and all the hardships that you've gone through as you're sitting here today thinking, oh, okay, well, I survived and I'm still here?
It's been a very difficult journey. It's been a very, very difficult journey. It's been a journey of failure, of despair, of homelessness, of rejection. I've had more rejections than most writers can bear. Many of the young writers who are very successful today, I worry for them just on this score. You know, I think you need to also be schooled in rejection, because part of the quiet authority of writing is surviving the wrong judgments of editors and publishers over things that you've written and rewritten to the best of your ability. To know that they were wrong when they rejected it is very important. My first 2 volumes of short stories, I must have sent them to just about every magazine on this planet. I'd send them out, and 2 weeks later they'd come back. I'd send them out and they'd come back. And I used to think, is it me or is it them? I survived that. When the first book of stories came out, and they were extremely well received, that taught me a very great lesson, which is that you do not judge yourself by the judgment of others on your work. You judge yourself by the depth of the work that you've put into your work, the depth of the learning and the understanding. And I've gone through a very long apprenticeship. It's important that one goes through a long apprenticeship, because a writer's career is like that. It goes up and it goes down. You go in and out of fashion. It's not natural for a writer to constantly be in favor, because if you're constantly in favor, it means that you're writing something quite superficial that constantly pleases people. If you're writing something that is challenging to people, if you're writing something that's challenging to yourself, you will sometimes baffle your readers. You will sometimes annoy your readers. You will sometimes be out of tune with your readers. You will sometimes be way ahead of your readers. You will sometimes be way to the side of your readers. And it's important that you have these ups and downs and that you survive them, because that's how you develop the authority of what you do. If you are a pianist, you practice 6 hours every day. That's the foundation of your art. And with us writers, the ups and the downs, the surviving the vicissitudes, the fluctuations of reputation is your foundation as well. So that you write from a centrality of the understanding of your craft. It becomes something between you and the impossibility that you've set yourself. I believe it is a very important job of writers to take readers by the scruff of the neck and drag them to places they don't want to go to, or seduce them to go to places they don't want to go to. But we must at all times constantly be taking readers forward, not keeping them where they are, not keeping them contented where they are, but taking them forward. Our job is to constantly stretch the sensibility of our age, constantly extend the possibility of what the mind can absorb and enjoy.